Natalie was always there for me. We had known each other since kindergarten, when a bully was shoving me on the playground and Natalie came running up and punched him in the nose. She and I had grown into fast friends over the years that followed, with her family living right down the street from my mum and me. I could make an entire subreddit with the stories of stupid shit we did. There was that time Natalie nearly died of hypothermia when she tried skateboarding on a frozen river after I said she was too big of a pussy to try it. Or the time when we competed to see who could shoplift the most expensive item from Walmart. Natalie walked out with a pack of gum. I got tackled by the manager trying to run out with a brand new BlackBerry. Natalie fed him some sob story about us being poor, and the manager let me go with a warning. Dumbass kids, I know, but we had fun. We spent every free moment together, getting into all sorts of trouble. Our parents used to tease us, asking when the wedding was, but the truth was, she was my best friend, and I only ever saw her as that. Natalie would always respond to those jokes, saying she'd never marry a guy as ugly as me, and we'd have a good laugh about it. I'll never forget those dumber, happier times. Back then, I thought we would have been best friends till the day we died. And maybe we would have, if it wasn't for Emma. Emma Jones was the love of my life back in high school. Back then, I thought I couldn't live without her. I sat behind her every day of freshman year of high school in history class, just gazing at her, wishing we could be together. She was my world, my true love. Funny, I can't even remember what she looks like anymore. Anyways, I was obsessed with her. Natalie used to roll her eyes when I'd gush to her about Emma at lunch, and tell me how much of a pervert I was, or how Emma was a brainless bimbo, but I didn't care. Back then, Emma Jones seemed like the most important thing in the world. About a month before prom, Emma dumped her boyfriend Chris after they had a huge argument in the lunchroom in front of the whole school. I couldn't believe my luck. It was like a sign from above, telling me this was my chance. It took me a while, but I finally worked up the courage to ask Emma to prom. Natalie told me repeatedly it was a bad idea, and I was just going to get my feelings hurt, but I ignored her and went for it. I remember the awkwardness of me following Emma halfway down the hallway, carrying a bouquet of flowers trying to get her attention. When I finally did, she said yes, and told me she had been hoping I would ask her ever since we'd been lab partners a week ago in bio. I remember thinking it was the happiest day of my life. I was such a dumbass. I went to rub in my success to Natalie and make fun of her for doubting me, but she seemed annoyed more than anything. Looking back now, it's painfully obvious what was going on, but I was too fucking stupid at the time to understand. I just figured Natalie was pissed that she was wrong about Emma not liking me. Over the next week, I barely saw Natalie. She didn't answer many of my texts, and she hardly said a word the few times we did run into each other. I'd like to say I wondered what was going on, but frankly, I'm pretty sure I was too excited and nervous for prom to focus on Natalie. Too busy to care about my best friend. Natalie did tell me she was going to prom with Chris, Emma's ex-boyfriend. I couldn't understand why. I hated that douchebag jock, mainly from back when he was dating Emma. Natalie had heard me talk about how much I didn't like him, but was going with him anyway. I was briefly annoyed, but didn't let it bother me. I was too excited about Emma. The night of prom finally arrived. Emma and her group of friends picked me up in a limo they had rented out. I barely knew any of the people there, but all that mattered to me was Emma. I remember sitting in the limo, laughing and carrying on with her. She kept putting her hand on my arm and smiling. I was in heaven. The thought of Natalie never crossed my mind. Prom itself was a blur. I had an amazing time with Emma, but all I remember now is glancing across the dance floor every now and then to see Natalie dancing with Chris. He kept shooting me dirty looks, no doubt because Emma had her hands all over me most of the night. I only caught Natalie's eyes once. I smiled and winked at her, to which Natalie's usual response would be flipping me off and laughing. She didn't this time, however. Natalie just stared at me. In the dim light of the dance floor, it was hard to see her face. But I could have sworn she looked scared. I paused briefly from my dancing, trying to get a better look. But Chris and Natalie had danced away into the crowd and I couldn't see them anymore. I was trying to make sense of what I had seen, but then Emma chose that moment to put her hands on my chest and kissed me. I was so giddy with excitement and passion that I completely forgot about Natalie. Forgot about my best friend. After prom, Emma and I, along with a bunch of our classmates, went to someone's house for an after party. The place was wild. I wasn't much of a drinker back in high school, but Emma got plastered almost immediately and kept forcing drinks into my hand. Each time I had one, she would kiss me. It was in the middle of one of those kisses that Chris and Natalie arrived at the party. I felt someone shove me hard. I fell to the floor, knocking into some other people. Chris stood above me, fists clenched. He looked fucking deranged, glaring down on me like I was an insect beneath his shoe. Chris was the biggest kid on the football team and weighed about 160 soaking wet. "Chris, don't!" Natalie yanked on his arm. "Please, let's get out of here, come on." Chris turned around, as if noticing all the people in the room for the first time. Emma was screaming at him that he was a psycho, and the kid hosting the party hollered from across the room for Chris to get the fuck out of his house. Chris, still visibly shaking with anger, grabbed Natalie's wrist and half dragged her out of the door. As I was laying on the floor, Natalie and I locked gazes. She had the same scared look from earlier. Fearful. Afraid. I tried to get up, but I was tipsy from the drinks and the wind was knocked out of me from Chris's shove. By the time I regained my legs, she was gone. I want to say I went after her, sprinting out the door to find where my best friend had gone. But instead, I let Emma lead me upstairs to her bedroom and forgot about Natalie for the rest of the night. The next day, I woke up hungover around 2 p.m. After I got my bearings and the groggy events of the previous night, I checked my phone to call Natalie and tell her thanks for keeping Chris from kicking my ass. I had 20 missed calls from my mum. When I called her back, she answered the phone sobbing. It took me 10 minutes to find out what was going on. The police had found Natalie dead in a parking lot. The rest of the story came out in the following weeks. Chris was found passed out in his truck, covered in Natalie's blood, surrounded by empty bottles of alcohol. They discovered he was abusing steroids to help his football career and made him prone to dangerous mood swings. The breakup with Emma had driven him to start drinking too, he claimed. I sat in the courtroom as Chris, tearfully and remorsefully, told the story of how angry seeing me making out with Emma at the party had made him. After leaving, he had tried to force himself onto Natalie in his truck, and when she resisted, he, in a blind rage, beat her savagely and dumped her, bruised and broken, to bleed to death in a mall parking lot. By the time a patrol car had stumbled upon her body, it was too late. Natalie's parents moved shortly after the funeral. Her mum gave me a small box with some of Natalie's things in it before they left. She would have wanted you to have something to remember her by, she said, giving me one last hug. Inside the box was a scrapbook Natalie had made, with a photo of us making goofy faces on the cover. The tears didn't start until I noticed that Natalie had drawn a heart around me in every picture. I'd been so fucking dense. Even now, I still see that scared look on her face from the last time I saw her. I lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, and I see her. Her eyes wide open, silently begging me for help. Sometimes I think I can hear her gurgling, choking on her own blood as she dies alone on the cold pavement of that parking lot, still watching me with those frightened, desperate eyes. I've been seeing those eyes for 15 years. Today is a new day though. I woke up this morning feeling better than I ever had since prom night. I double-checked the news this morning. Chris is set to be released on parole for good behaviour. Natalie was always there for me. Now, I can finally be there for her.